Chapter 3. The Mask of Kindness. Shame gathered under his skin like heat trapped in a sealed pipe, worse than the throbbing in his lip. Noah sat alone on the discarded ore crate, the fight returning in pieces. Jesse's fist, Devrin vanishing into the crowd, Calla kneeling beside him with anger held so tightly it had nowhere to go. "Do what you want." Her words echoed louder than Jesse's taunts. She had not sounded angry. Anger would have been easier. Devrin stayed for a while after she left, muttering things that almost became apologies. Then he left too, shoulders hunched, carrying the same silence he had worn after the fight. Noah let him go. He was too tired to forgive him, too tired to ask him to stay. For what felt like hours, he listened to Brightmoor pretend nothing had happened. A breaker's hammer clanged somewhere distant. Traders haggled in the main square. The grid hummed low and uneven through the walls. Every familiar sound pushed him farther out of place. He could not face his mother yet. She would touch his chin, turn his bruises toward the light, and try to hide whatever the sight did to her. The neighbors would be worse, going quiet when he passed, pretending not to notice his swollen eye while noticing nothing else. He needed somewhere small and dark and quiet, somewhere he did not have to pretend he was not hurt. There was one place he could still go. Noah pushed himself off the crate, his bruised ribs flaring with every careful breath, and took the back corridors before the square could find him again. He kept clear of the main paths, cutting behind storage alcoves and sagging laundry lines, past sealed utility doors and pipes, sweating cold water down the stone. Twice, voices rounded a corner ahead of him, and he stopped in the narrow between until they passed. He did not want questions or pity or anyone studying his face long enough to decide what the bruises meant. By the time he reached the far edge of the residential sector, Brightmoor had thinned to a distant murmur. Pipes knocking behind walls, boots crossing grates, a vendor calling out the last of his stock somewhere far behind him. Behind a row of dormant pump machinery, rust-caked and dead enough for adults to forget, a narrow maintenance grate sat hidden in the floor. Only the three of them knew it was there. Earlier that day, Calla had wanted the new tunnel. Noah had imagined the three of them slipping past the chalk lines, Devrin grumbling about rules while Calla found the first safe foothold, all of them laughing too quietly because getting caught would ruin the fun. Jesse had ruined it instead, and now the only tunnel left was this one, old and narrow beneath dead machinery. No Calla leading, no Devrin pretending not to be excited, just Noah and the dark. He knelt over the grate, metal biting through his trousers as he wedged his fingers beneath the edge. Damp, metallic air breathed up from the darkness, threaded with old dust, cold iron, and the faint sourness of trapped water. Below, the ventilation shafts waited in silence, a narrow labyrinth snaking through the bones of the settlement. Once they had been a fortress for all three of them. Today they were only his. Noah dropped into the dark, boots ringing softly on the metal walkway below. He reached up and pulled the heavy grate back into place. With that, Brightmoor vanished. No traders, no banners, no Jesse, no Devrin's silence, no Calla making him feel smaller without saying a word. Only the low hum of the air recyclers, the faint drip of condensation somewhere ahead, and his own shallow breathing. Better this way, alone. Noah moved through the shafts by memory, one hand trailing along the dusty wall. The main run let him walk upright, but the side tunnels bent low around him, rusted metal scraping his shoulders whenever he had to crouch. Each dip pulled at his ribs. Every breath remembered Jesse's fist. Turns, junctions, loose panels. He knew them all. Years ago, he and Calla had mapped the accessible sections onto a piece of scavenged slate hidden deeper in the network. She had named the junctions because Noah kept forgetting which was which. Needle Turn, Split Grate, Old Lung, names that meant nothing to anyone else and everything to them. Calla could move through the shafts without counting steps, without dragging her hand along the wall, as if the dark made room for her before she reached it. The thought hurt worse than his bruised eye. Noah shoved it down and kept moving. The junction he wanted sat farther in, where a smaller maintenance duct branched upward and ended behind a wide ventilation screen overlooking the commons, the busy heart of Brightmoor's upper tier. That was where they used to go when they wanted the world without having to stand inside it. Their perch had always smelled wrong. Devrin said the vent stank like dead pump water, and for once nobody argued with him. From there, hidden in the vent shadows, they could watch all of Brightmoor pass below without Brightmoor watching back. Noah pulled himself into the smaller duct and crawled the last few feet on his hands and knees. By the time he settled in front of the screen, dust was drifting through the columns of light that fell from the common's high glowstone fixtures. Brightmoor rose beneath him in muffled pieces, voices, tools, the squeal of a vendor's cart. From up here, it almost felt like it belonged to someone else. Elder Thorne crossed the square below and stopped to trade pleasantries with a wealthy ore trader. His smile held until the trader turned away. Then it fell from him, too heavy to keep carrying. A group of breakers came off shift, laughing, their faces grimed with rock dust, their shoulders still powdered from the tunnels. The sound was loud, too loud. It cut off the moment they left the main flow of workers. Families haggled over ration scraps with smiles stretched bright over tired mouths, cheerfully pretending handfuls of dried fungus and gray meal would stretch farther than they could. Everyone had a mask. Hagen wore disappointment like a robe. Devrin wore his grin like armor. Calla wore quiet so carefully that people mistook it for weakness. His mother wore kindness with both hands, and Noah had spent most of his life forgetting it was something a person could choose to put on. And him? Noah pressed his tongue against the split in his lip, stopping when the pain sharpened. Maybe he wore courage the way children wore oversized coats, dragging at the sleeves and hoping no one noticed it did not fit. From up here, hidden behind the vent screen like a ghost in the walls, the masks slipped. But the walls still groaned when no one was listening. The pipes trembled. The vents kept breathing because no one knew what would happen if they stopped. A few people passed near the corridor and slowed just enough to notice Hagen. Then their faces turned carefully blank, and they found somewhere else to be. Hagen stood off to the side near the mouth of a dark, unused storage corridor. He did not stand like an elder there. No lifted chin, no folded hands, no patient, disappointed stare. His thin frame seemed drawn too tight beneath his robes, and every few seconds his attention jerked across the commons as if he expected someone to call his name. A moment later, a deep sector trader stepped from the corridor, the same man Noah and Devrin had seen arguing with Hagen the day before. He seemed smaller now. No shouting, no public fury, only a hushed exchange, brutal in the quick, angry cuts of his hands. Noah pressed closer to the screen, straining to hear, but the commons swallowed their voices. The trader handed Hagen a small, heavy pouch. Hagen took it without checking inside and buried it quickly in his robes. A third shape emerged from the same dark corridor. It moved without the usual sounds of Brightmoor. No boot scrape, no cloth rasp. Cloaked head to toe in deep blood red, face swallowed by the shadow of a hood, the stranger crossed the edge of the commons with a smoothness that made the hairs on Noah's arms rise. A silver pendant flashed at the stranger's throat. The shape was some old-world predator, long-snouted and sharp-eared, its jaws open in a silent snarl. For a moment, Noah could not place it. Then one of Hagen's lessons surfaced, a faded plate of animals that had lived before the world retreated underground. Wolf! That was what they had called it. The red-robed stranger did not speak to the trader, only gave a slight nod. The trader scurried away. When the hood turned toward Hagen, the elder seemed to lose whatever bones held him upright in the classroom. Noah had hated Hagen for years. He had never thought to wonder what Hagen hated or what Hagen feared. Hagen lowered his head in a gesture too small to be a bow and too frightened to be respect. They spoke for only a moment, their words too low to carry. The stranger handed Hagen a small rolled scroll, and Hagen took it with a trembling hand. Then the red-robed stranger slipped back into the corridor's dark seam, leaving Hagen alone with the pouch hidden in his robes, the scroll clenched in his fist, and sweat shining across his pale face. For a long moment, Hagen stood there as the commons moved around him. Then he gathered himself badly and hurried away from the storage corridor, ducking into a side passage that led toward the administrative wing. Noah's curiosity became an itch under his skin, stronger than the dull ache in his ribs. He crawled backward through the dusty intersecting shafts, clumsy from pain, but careful enough to keep the metal from singing under his knees. Below, Hagen's hurried footsteps guided him through the walls. Noah followed by sound, counting turns, dragging himself through a tighter side shaft until another grate appeared high in the wall of a dim records room. He pressed his face close to the slats. The room was cramped, packed with aging data slates and paper files, one of those dusty corners of Brightmoor where old decisions went to rot. Hagen locked the door behind him and leaned against it, breath coming in shallow, panicked pulls. For a moment, the elder stayed there with one hand flat against the door, as if holding the whole commons on the other side. Then he forced himself upright, crossed to a small table in the center of the room, and emptied the trader's pouch. Not coin, not ration slips. Machine parts spilled across the table, polished gears made from a strange dark metal, tightly wound coils of silver wire, and a power conduit with connection points Noah had never seen before. Not Brightmoor tech. Scavenged, maybe. Old world, but clean. Hagen ignored the parts. His trembling hands went to the scroll given to him by the robed figure. He broke the wax seal carefully, and Noah caught the shape pressed into it before it split. A wolf's head, long-snouted and sharp-eared, jaws open in a silent snarl. The letters were too small to read from the vent, but Hagen understood them. He read the page once, then again, and his face changed as if something huge had shifted in the dark behind the words. A cave bear, maybe, all teeth and weight and matted fur. His knuckles whitened around the parchment. He stumbled back and caught himself against the table. "No," Hagen whispered, the word barely carrying to the vent. "Not now. God help us. It's too soon." From inside his robes, he fumbled out a small chemical lighter. It took 3 tries before the flame caught. When it did, Hagen touched it to the corner of the scroll and held on. The parchment blackened. The strange script curled into itself. Hagen watched it burn, terror holding him in place until the flame licked his fingertips. He hissed through his teeth and dropped the last smoking scraps to the floor. Then his boot came down hard, grinding the ash into the dust until there was nothing left to read. Noah jerked back from the grate too fast. His shoulder struck the wall, pain flaring through his ribs, and the breath he dragged in tasted of dust, metal, and old trapped water. None of it made sense. The pouch, the machine parts, the red robe, the wolf seal burning into ash beneath Hagen's boot. Noah felt the shape of it the way he felt a bad vent trembling before it blew. Heat gathering behind metal, pressure hunting for the weakest seam. Kala would have seen the pattern before he did. The thought came before he could stop it. She would have noticed which hand Hagen used to hide the pouch, which corridor the red robe came from, which lies sat under the lies. She would have made one quiet comment that turned the whole thing sideways. But Calla was not there. Noah had made sure of that. He needed out. Back to the main shaft. Back to the grate. Back to the wider corridors, stale air and all. Noah had reached a section of the network he did not know as well, a deep arterial shaft running behind the western wall of the commons. The air here felt colder. Damp, oily residue slicked the vent metal beneath his palm. He was about to turn into a familiar connecting tunnel when the wall began to hum. His fingers pressed hard against the metal. Not because the sound was loud, because it was wrong. This was not Brightmoor's usual decay, not pumps, recyclers, quarry chains, or old stone complaining in the dark. This was cleaner, deeper. A vibration rose through the floor and settled into his bones, steady enough to feel intentional. Every map Noah had studied showed nothing beneath this section but solid bedrock. The memory of last night's boom crawled up his spine. The vibration had rhythm, shape, purpose. It moved beneath his hands like something enormous working behind a hidden wall of the settlement. His first instinct, the one Calla always saw too clearly, told him to follow it, to know it. But he had already mistaken pain for courage once today. The second instinct put one hand behind him, searching for the wall. Noah listened to that one. He did not care about being quiet anymore. He scrambled back through the shafts, boots clanging against the metal. The hum followed through the floor, through the walls, through his teeth. He finally reached the main access grate, breath burning thin in his chest, and fumbled for the latch. His fingers slipped once, twice, before the metal gave under his thumb. He shoved the grate open and hauled himself into the familiar dim corridor behind the dormant pump machinery. For a moment, Noah stayed folded over with his hands on his knees, dragging air through his teeth until the panic loosened enough to lie to him. It was just a sound. He had not seen anything. He could forget it. Go home. Nurse his bruised face. Pretend this entire miserable day had never happened. He turned to leave the deserted corridor, but his foot never found the next step. His mother stood at the far end of the hall, half hidden in the shadows, as if she had known exactly where he would come out. Her arms were crossed. The calm on her face did not belong to a mother finding her son bruised, bleeding, hours late, and climbing out of a restricted shaft. No gasp, no scolding, no rush toward him with worried hands. Just that terrible, waiting calm. She took one slow step out of the shadows. The corridor light caught her face and made it almost gentle, but her light blue eyes held him with a precision that raised the hair along the back of his neck. "Did you hear anything strange, Noah?" she asked. "No," he lied, too quickly. His mother did not start with the blood, not the torn sleeve, not the grime on his hands. Her attention stayed on his face, measuring the lie before the bruises. "Good," she said. She stepped closer and touched his chin, turning his swollen face toward the corridor light. Noah almost leaned into her hand. Then he felt how carefully she was holding him. Her fingers were gentle, but they were not soft. "Jesse?" Noah pulled away. "Does it matter?" "It always matters who teaches you pain." The words left him with nowhere to put his anger. Her hand left his chin. For a moment, her fingers hovered between him and the sealed grate, as if she had almost reached for the wrong one. "There are places in Brightmoor that were closed for a reason. If you hear something beneath the stone, you walk away from it. You don't follow it. You don't ask clever questions, and you do not drag your friends into it." "What is it?" Noah asked. For the first time, something almost broke through her calm, Not fear, not exactly. Memory, maybe. Then it vanished. His mother held him there a moment longer. That is a question you're not ready to have answered. But I'm asking it. I know, she said softly. She turned and started down the corridor. After 3 steps, she stopped without looking back. Come home, before the settlement remembers you're missing. Noah followed her because his body hurt too much to argue, and because this time his mother's calm did not feel like comfort. It felt like a door being held shut. That night, sleep did not come easily. Noah lay beneath the low ceiling while the day broke apart and rearranged itself. Jesse's fist, Calla's silence, Hagen's pale terror in the records room, the wolf seal burning into ash, the hum beneath the stone. His mother had known where he would come out. She had known what not to ask. Worst of all, she had known what he might have heard.